Welcome to Business on the Vine. I'm your host, Lady Jen Du Plessis, and in this dynamic series, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and victories of entrepreneurs who have turned their passion into success. Welcome. Well, hey everyone, and hey you for showing up here today and listening in on Business on the Vine. I'm so delighted today to have a friend of mine, Hollie Mileski, and I have to tell you, it's so funny how we met during COVID.
Really?
A live event during COVID, and that was before they cut everything off. Said no more events, right? And I remember there was like one person at a 6-foot table. Yeah, everybody was truly 6 feet apart. Nobody was really showing up. My client was there, and that's where I met you. And that was in what, 2020?
In Atlanta, hot Atlanta.
Yeah.
No.
And we just kind of skipped next to each other and by each other and around each other for a couple of years. And we saw each other on the Marketers Cruise. Here I go again with the Marketers Cruise. Boy, I do meet a lot of people there. And rekindled again. You came to my mastermind and contributed. Thank you so much for doing that. And just happy to finally have you on the show.
I'm so glad to be here. You're so delightful. Your husband is as well, and he's so supportive of you and what you do in the world. And it's just been fun to know you both. So.
Thank you. Everybody loves Brian. Everybody loves Brian. I'm okay with it, and I'm proud to have him as a business partner. He does all my joint venture relationships and affiliate things, and he just talks to people.
Well, it's important to have a supportive spouse in this type of work because a lot of people don't get it. And a lot of people don't understand it. And,
they definitely.
And it's like the group that's really really just get the job, go get a job, let me retire at 65. They don't understand this type of lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we worked together for 17 years. And then I departed and he stayed in the industry, and then he departed, and it's been 18 months that he's been home. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with you being home.
Right.
You either need to
get a hobby
or hop back on the team again. And he's like, I'm on the team. Let's do it.
Okay. Awesome.
Mostly because someone said, where's Brian? And I was like, apparently you need to be there. Well, again, it's just a great pleasure to have you here today. And, we're going to talk about a lot of different things in leadership. It's one of my favorite topics. And so one of the first things I want to ask you is, let's talk about the overuse of the word leadership. There are so many business coaches and so many leadership coaches, of which I'm both. Right. Yes. So I'm guilty.
Yes.
And you are too, right?
Yes.
We both do it. And everybody has a little, different specialty that they do within that. I don't know, maybe someone could be a business coach from end to end, but I think we all have a better niche as a coach. So it's finding the right niche at the right time, that you need the help. But so let's talk about your thoughts on the word leadership and what it means for you, because you have a company called Highjump Leadership, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But tell us a little bit about your take on that.
I love the word leadership, but it is often an overused word. So I think allowing people to define it and what it means to them is super important. So thank you for that opportunity. High jump leadership is, I was a high jumper, and I've talked about that. We may talk about that some more, but it's all about how do you set it. I was in track and field as a high jumper. It's all about how do you set the bar, the steps to achieve the bar, and then how do you up level the bar. That's where the name for the company came from. But the word leadership, I often struggle with, do I want to call myself a leadership coach or not?
Right.
And on one level, there's so many, it's saturated. On another level, it's like, well, what does that mean practically in terms of the value that you're going to provide, in terms of the learning you're going to provide, and how you're going to help people grow and expand? And for me, leadership is about a state of being. It's conscious leadership, and it is an inner game that gets transmuted into an outer game. And what my experience, I was in consulting for a lot of years, working with C-suite executive leaders. And my observation was that we were teaching leadership predominantly from an outside game perspective, which left you, the individual, out of it. Or somewhat out of it, let's put it that way.
Okay, so let me ask you about that. So what is your definition of the outer leadership that they were teaching?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Semantics? Was it
Outer leadership is your traditional leadership training. So it's like, how do you build a high performing team, as an example, is a good example of a traditional leadership. How do you manage a meeting? How do you give feedback? What they're doing, though, and when we're teaching those trainings, it doesn't get into the who am I? How am I showing up in those moments? What's
Yeah.
my intentionality about how I am being with the person or persons that I am looking to influence? And so
Ah,
that so
yeah.
so that piece of influence and who am I being is
Mhm.
the part that I think is a nuance that is a little bit skipped, and quite honestly is so ultra important at a certain point in your career. If you aren't paying attention to it, it kind of you get thrown off your game, and you're leading for other people versus leading from your own direction and your own internal compass.
Yeah. So this is it, it's to me, it's akin to, everything was about IQ and then we went to EQ and I do want to talk about EQ. But it's the emotional quotient, right? It's the servant leader who has that emotional intelligence. And now, it's AQ. It's all about agility, to be able to maneuver I'm going to work from home. I need a hybrid. I'm not working from the office, or I am in the office and I don't have a desk. And there's all kinds of new attributes that are challenging that emotional intelligence that I feel a leader needs to have. So I'm thinking of this as emotional intelligence, right? Is that you have to have that inner thinking and that thinking of I have to be able to stand on my own. I don't need to be the leader. I can be the leader. I can be the follower. Is that what you're speaking to, or is this even deeper than that you're talking about?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes and yes. I love
and
that. It definitely starts. So I have I usually begin with something called Know the Real You.
okay.
REAL stands for, is an acronym that I utilize, and that starts with that emotional intelligence component.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like a stage one of that internal knowing of who you are. And
Hmm.
and it begins with understanding, why am I feeling this way and why am I having a given reaction? So it's about it's a superpower to get mastery over your emotions and what you do with them. But emotions are incredibly important in terms of being a compass to why you may or may not be wanting to do something or not do something.
Yeah.
So REAL is recognize when you're in a reaction, evaluate the original source of the reaction, not necessarily what just happened in front of you. A is allow yourself to recognize that that's in the past. And then L is letting it go and making a different choice that serves you and those you're here to serve.
Yeah.
And so it begins with that part of it. Now, I think there's a piece that we can go beyond that, which is really getting to understand not only our reactional system, but who is our ego? When is our ego showing up? How do I really understand how my ego serves versus how I'm being my authentic self, which I come from the belief system that every human on the planet, if we're in our true authenticity, it's not about us. We're here to do something, to give, to uplift those people around us, whatever your gift is in the world. And
Yeah.
so I come from that space, and oftentimes I think we get so caught up in, well, this is what the world tells us who we are. This is what the world tells us who we should be. This is what the word tells us how we should lead or what we should accomplish. And we forget who we are in the equation, and that impacts how we make decisions, how we guide a path. And
Yeah.
so it's a little bit even beyond the emotional quotient.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to unpack in there because there's so many, I mean, there are definitely so many pieces on it. One of the things
Yeah.
that, and maybe I'm often I know I'm hearing you. Let me just say it that way. I am hearing you, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm often describing this, but, a lot of leaders that I coach, because I coach business leaders as well and owners of companies is, I treat everybody the same.
Mm.
And as you were talking about that, I'm thinking that's ego,
Yeah.
because it's one of the biggest hurdles. That's funny. I didn't intend for that.
There you go. Good pun.
But it's one of the big, that was good. One of the biggest hurdles that I have to overcome is people understanding that, and I work a lot with situational leadership, right?
Yeah.
And it requires that step back to analyze before you go for someone's throat or you go for a reaction, right? Or got to get the answer and get the result. And it's that step back to remember, who am I working with? Where is their competency level? How committed are they to this? What's my style going to be? What's their personality style? What's their generation? Before we say yes, or
Mm.
before we say, take a step forward. So, where does ego unintentionally find itself in a traditional business owner that, maybe was in corporate and now they've shifted over into entrepreneurship?
Oh, that's a fun one. We can talk about that last sentence for a while.
Yeah.
Um, but to address maybe the first part of it, I'll give you an example. I was at a networking breakfast. Tons of little small business owners were there, and this one gentleman gets up and he keeps talking about how he just can't find good talent. You know,
Uh,
he,
okay, here we go.
he can't find good talent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sitting here, he's so ingrained in that because that statement got repeated multiple times. Well, if he can't find good talent, he's never going to find good talent
Right. Because he's
because
putting it out there. Yeah.
exactly it is the energy he is putting out there.
Mhm.
Whereas I often believe, how can, just because someone doesn't do something the way you might do it, it's how do you look for how they would approach the problem in a manner that serves their thinking pattern. And I'll give you a great example. When I was at PwC, I was coaching a young gal. She was a couple of years out of college and she had been working in our pharma industry practice sector, and she felt like she was about to get fired. And she was getting really bad feedback from a lot of men, and she couldn't, around her PowerPoint presentations, around how she was doing analysis. We started digging into her, and I spent time with her. I spent time listening. I spent time trying to look at some of her work. I spent time trying to really analyze what was really happening at the crux of it. And here's what I got to. Her managers at the time were wanting her to go from A to B to C, just how they prescribed A to B to C.
Mm-hmm.
But her mind didn't analyze that way. Her mind was much more on the creative end of things. So she would have hypotheses all around, and she would narrow into a solution this way. Once we got to that, we could find a way to help her show up in that space better and also communicate to the people that we were putting in charge of her to lead her in her engagements. This is how you communicate with her. So
Yeah.
it was about, and then she started, after that, she got promoted, she got hired by a client. I mean, it just really shifted a lot of energy and it shifted a lot of results, which is what it's all about.
Oh my gosh, I've been talking about this so much lately. We just released, actually next week. By the time this is released, it'll already be released. But we just released a new program. It's a certified podcast guest program
Yeah.
because and I think about this all the time, and I don't mean anything badly against a bunch of hosts and everything, but I've been around for 14 years doing this, right? And I
Yeah.
say to everybody, have you ever been managed by a horrible manager?
Mm,
Right. And sometimes as a podcast guest, you don't have the best hosts.
yeah.
And so you have to reverse engineer the management. And that's really what you're talking here about. I've had to do that. I've had to say in my past, 30 some years ago, like that guy is not a good manager.
Yeah.
So I need to manage him.
And
Right.
management's slightly different than leadership,
Well,
but
of
I
course,
believe,
but
yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah,
yeah, of course it is.
yeah. And a
But
lot of people have been promoted to those positions because they were good at what they did before,
and
but
not
that
good at what.
doesn't give them the right skills for being in management.
Yeah. And we see that with people that are moving from corporate into this, space of
Mhm.
ownership, right?
Right.
And this is one of the things that I'm sure you harp on all the time. I'm harping on all the time
Yeah.
is that the skill set that you brought with you may not be you. There may be gaps in
Yeah.
your practice, right? I know when I left corporate, I had tons of leadership skills, tons of management skills, and tons of sales skills, but
Mm,
I don't do P&Ls.
yeah.
I don't do the grunt that, and I don't mean grunt work. Like I just don't, I'm a great numbers person, but I don't want to play with numbers all day long.
Yeah.
right? I don't know how to build funnels. My team does that, right?
Uh,
So I hire my weaknesses. That's what Dr. Greg Reed says all the time, right? Hire your weaknesses and work your strengths. Yeah, and so we don't bring that in, and yet this is something that everyone just through attrition becomes a leader. They
yeah.
think they're a leader, right? That
Yeah.
leadership. So since I mentioned management and you said there's something different, and I totally agree because there's a very
Mhm.
unique definition of management versus leadership, and we'll leave everyone to figure that actual definition. What's
Mhm.
your definition?
Let me use an example maybe.
Yeah.
I definitely think management is about tasks and,
Yes, it
and
is.
leadership is strategy. Let's
Vision.
put it in that
Yeah.
term. And
Yeah.
I believe that if you were to think about how communication goes from bottom to up, if you were to draw
Mhm.
that, tactical communication is here, but strategic communication is
Yeah.
here.
Absolutely.
Strategic communication is about getting alignment, getting people moving in the same direction, getting people on board, getting people to a vision that says, yes, we've got this and we are the best at
Right.
what we do.
Yeah.
Tactics is just checking the boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Micromanaging.
we had to check those boxes. Now,
Yeah.
what I found in corporate, and part of the reason why I'm doing what I would do, I'd have so many people in titles of leadership that were task managers that were
Yes.
not making the time to do the leadership activities,
Right.
that they were leaving huge gaps of opportunity on the ground. And in some respects, they're wastefully spending millions of dollars on programs and strategies and projects because they're not dedicating their time and emphasis in the right places.
Yeah.
And and that was one of the things that used to frustrate me a little bit, and probably why I actually ultimately chose to leave and start my own thing. I was like, what are we not hitting in this space
Yeah.
that really is missing? And that's what I wanted to attack and wanted to approach.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I'm sure like you, I started off as a manager and then I managed managers, which made me a leader, but I didn't know it yet.
Mhm.
Right. I was just managing managers and you can't
Yeah.
manage managers. That's where the problem starts. You need to lead managers, but ultimately I ended up being the trainer for this company for 1,500 managers. I
Yeah.
trained managers and leaders, all the manager levels, right? But I ended up
Mhm.
training all of them for years. I was the trainer, and
Yeah.
I totally see what you're talking about. That, and I want to go back to the other point you made. Is like if you're a really good, let's say, salesperson, or you're a really good widget maker, and all of a sudden you're managing all the other widget makers or all the other salespeople, the tendency for a manager who might be in a leadership, need to be in a leadership role too, but the tendency is to teach and lead and guide and coach everybody the same way you did it.
Mhm.
Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
And that to me is ego.
Yeah,
It's like
that's a success, or what do they call it?
yeah.
Recipe for failure.
Yeah, that is ego. Well, I did it this way. This is how I learned
I
it. So
do it.
it should be this way, right? So there's a
Yeah.
whole bucking up yourself. This is how you make yourself feel good. And
Yeah.
it's not about you. It's
Mhm.
about how do you get the team organized. So
Mm.
I believe leadership, when we take ourselves out of the equation and we trust that people are here to do what the best that they can for us, and you make it safe for them to show up with their creativity, you're going to start getting exceptional results. And,
Yeah.
and and those are the companies I like to work with. Those are the people that I like to work with. Now we're human, so we're all going to fall back on that, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
perfectly fine. But the element is to acknowledge it, be able to recognize it, and be able to transition yourself into a different state of being so
Yeah.
that you shift it. I had this day where I stepped back here. That's not what I want to accomplish. That's not what's going to accomplish it for the team. It's not what's going to accomplish it for our business. It's not what's going to accomplish it for ultimately our customers or clients. So you shift your energy. Leaders know how to shift their energy. They know how to be positive, uplifting, create vision, look for solutions. I
Mhm.
love WD-40 and Gary Ridge, who is a former CEO there. I got to meet him and just spend some time with him. He's written books with Jerry Blanchard on leadership. It's not about making mistakes, it's about having learning moments and
Yeah.
understanding and having a culture where people can have something that went off the rails. why did it go off the rails? What do we need to change? What do we need to learn from that? And how would you approach it? So when you give people that opportunity and that space, then they can try things and they want to get up for work. You make it a place where they want to be because they feel seen and heard.
Right. Well, it's a shift, right? It's a shift from people being enabled because you're coming in saying, I want it done this way. I want it done this way. I don't want to solicit any feedback from you because if I do, that makes me weaker. And that's the ego
Mm-hmm.
position, right? To
Yes.
empowering, right?
Yes.
Empowering people to make decisions. And they may make a few that aren't quite right. And that's a
Yeah.
learning experience, like you're saying. But I think that that's, super powerful. Okay, so you wrote the book called "Be the Leader You Would Follow."
It's not published yet, but it's about to be. So yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so be the leader you would follow. Tell us a little bit about. I know we've been talking about this a little bit, but
Yeah.
we've been talking about, I'm here are my eyes. I'm the leader. I'm looking at my team. Now tell me how the team's going to look at me.
So be the leader you would follow. There's two keywords in there. It's being you, be you. And that begins with what we kind of started off at the beginning of the conversation is knowing the real you, and
Mhm.
and being able to really have a definition of that becomes your strong foundation. There's a consciousness component to it. There is a spirituality component to it. There's a mind, body, soul integration to it. That's the beginning stage. And
Mhm.
you know, I'll share something about my own career. And when I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, there was a point where I got to where I didn't feel seen and heard in my trajectory there. I had been hired to help build the industry practice for the pharmaceutical practice here on the West Coast, based out of the West Coast. Now,
Mhm.
if you know anything about consulting in the pharma industry, that was new and innovative because everyone lives on the East Coast.
Right, right, because they were all here with me.
Exactly,
I did all
exactly.
their loans when I was in lending. Yeah.
Exactly. So come to day one, I'm starting, I had all these agreements with someone, and they had a reorg between the 3 weeks earlier when I'd accepted the position and the day I started on the job. Not only were they not expecting me in the office, but the reorg took the person that I had all my agreements with out of the picture.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of in a position of being put into a typecast box with very different expectations about what I was going to be able to contribute.
Mhm.
And instead of not, now the key part, the important, and that happens, that's not a right or wrong necessarily, it's just the situation. But what was important in that situation is me and my awareness of who I was. So
Mhm.
at that stage, I had been in consulting for a long time, working 12, 16, 20-hour days. I was definitely on the hamster wheel, and I was proud to be able to be very good at pumping out an awful lot of work and getting
Right.
a lot of people going from
Glorification of busyness.
exactly. And I was great at getting my clients to go from no, we can't to yes, we can. That was my one of my gifts. And I also had done training like you with thousands of people globally on how to do that.
Mhm.
But what I had forgotten in the equation was me. What was important to me? What made me feel valued? What did I want to accomplish? What was my vision for my life and my career?
Mhm.
And so the consequence of that was I stayed for 4 years trying to make a situation work based on the original agreement I had when I accepted the
Yeah.
position,
Okay. Yeah.
rather than
Renegotiating that.
renegotiating it and or recognizing that
Yeah.
culture was no longer going to potentially work for me and
Yeah.
just going elsewhere. And
And
there was
fighting it, fighting it day and night, day and night. How do you
mm,
know when it's time to not let me re-ask the question because I mean that you were in an employee situation. I want to talk about leadership, um, I use a phrase with a company that I used to work for is that, I didn't leave the company left me.
there's definitely some pieces to that, but I want to address what you said. It was about me as an employee, but impacted who I was as a leader.
Yeah,
So
because we're leading ourselves every moment. Do we realize that,
exactly,
right? Are we realizing that we're a leader in every relationship we have, including
exactly.
ourselves,
And
right?
the choices I was making
Yeah.
impacted the energy and the way I communicated and showed up for the people around me. That's the part that's the inner game
Yeah.
of leadership. And so when we lose contact and connection with that, which is why mind, body, soul, and be the leader you would follow is so important. Because when we stay grounded in that just reality and that requires a little bit of vulnerability. I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. All that vulnerability and in showing up in who we are, even in our workplaces, as opposing to you just need to buck up and be professional. Like, what the heck
And
is
walk
that?
around and tell everybody what to do. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm a human being. We're all human beings, and we spend more time at work than with anyone else in our lives, especially if you're in a corporate setting. If
yeah,
you're in an entrepreneur setting, similarly, because you're spending a lot of time maybe more alone, but you have to be out there and influencing your partners and influencing your clients and always attracting that business. So, how you can show up and the energy that you show up in, your joy, your happiness, your satisfaction, your reward, you're feeling fulfilled. I actually think it's not about feeling happy, which is one story that a lot of people get on when they talk about
right.
leadership. I believe it's about being fulfilled. And that's about being on purpose for what really just drives your soul to a way that you are showing up in all your gifts. And it's not necessarily about you, doesn't mean you're not going to get rewarded for it. But I'm saying it's really about what you're here to honor and give to that position, to that goal, to that strategy. And are you out there creating the world you want to live in?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful, wonderful. I thank
Mm.
you. Thank you so much for that. It's so brilliant. I want to talk about your athletic background because
Oh,
this kind of rolls us right into leading ourselves and being our authentic
yeah.
selves. You made the comment before, as you know, it's sort of like game face, right? Game time that you have to go inner and have that
Mhm.
game that I know when I go on stage, I'm sitting behind the stage praying, and I'm not praying for me. I'm praying that the Holy Spirit will come through, and
Yeah.
someone who needs to hear what I have to say has heard it, and I may not ever know that it
Yeah.
changed their life, right? And but it's that inner game. Tell us how that inner game can, because I see it, it's not control. It's you were saying about lead, right? LEAD, about having that or real. Was it real?
Real,
Real.
REAL. How to
REAL.
know the real
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. A real.
Yeah.
And how recognizing, how are you reacting to what's around you? I was not an athlete like you, but I want you to talk about your path. But
Mhm.
as an athlete, you do, to a certain amount, have to have some blinders on to learn this self-control, and that's why I said I wasn't sure if I wanted to say that, but it kind of is. It's like that self-control. Comparison is the thief of joy, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
if you're comparing yourself to, oh, well, that athlete this and this athlete that, it's like, what can I do with my greatness?
yeah,
So speak to that a little bit. I want to hear about your background. I already know, but I want to hear
yeah.
about your background, and then how that mirrors what leaders need to do.
Mm, so love that
This is a
question.
long question. Sorry about that.
No, but it's a really good one. I mean, I think I was such the tomboy growing up and just loved sports all over the place. And if I had known at age 22 I could have been a sportcaster on ESPN, I probably would have gone that route.
Right.
Um, I was that much into my sports. But I played basketball, I ran track,
Hmm.
I played volleyball. Um, Here's the thing, and why I love the high jump. And when I'm on stage, I talk about it a lot. I use different analogies around what it can represent. But a high jump, if you think about it, it's this tall bar, and it's sitting roughly 15 large steps away from you, 15 to 20, depending on your pacing. And you have to go and you have to jump and you have to have everything clear that bar. That's your hair, that's your shoe, that's your clothing. You have to have it almost precision perfect. And when you're doing that, when you're first learning it, you're learning the skills, right? You're learning this how all this how to do the steps, how to plant, how to try and get your energy moving in a particular way. And just like anything, we have skills that we learn and then we practice them. And then you get out of the world where you're not even thinking about that part of it anymore.
Right. Becomes second nature. Yeah.
It's just like driving a car. It's
Brushing your teeth, right? I mean,
exactly.
if you're the opposite hand, try brushing your teeth for a while with the other hand.
Exactly. Or
And it's
writing with the other
wonky,
hand.
right? And then all of a sudden, oh, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, yeah. But so you master those. But
Yeah.
when you're in that point of going to that level of excellence, that extra 1 to 2%, you have to really have this core belief in yourself, this groundedness that is I am going to be the best me in this moment that you can. And let me tell you how that functioned for me. Envision being at the state championship, and I am have just cleared a personal best. So that was super cool, right? Super awesome. I'm all, woohoo, you go, girl, and I'm high fiving my teammates and stuff. But I have another jump coming up. So I can't
Yeah,
really think
prepare.
about the one I just did.
Yeah.
I have to focus on the one that's in front of me, the
Mhm.
next step. I have to get, so that, because that's already in the past, right? It was 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. I also can't worry too much about the jump because then I'm worrying and I'm overwhelmed about, oh, can I do it? I've never jumped this before. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So you can't do it
Oh,
that way.
because you'll manifest that. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, even the Bible says that, don't worry.
Exactly.
Stop
So, so,
worrying.
so, so
Yeah.
the past, and this is about emotion and energy in general, right? But the past is happiness, joy, grief, any emotion that you've got running in your system that's allowing you not to be right in that moment.
Yeah.
Overwhelm and worry are in the future. But present is just you in that bar, you in that bar, you in that bar, you in that bar. And you step inside, kind of going really, really deep, breathing a little bit, getting super centered, the world goes away. You're not, you might be visualizing in your head the steps that you're going to do, the steps, and you're going to visualize that plant and you're going to visualize curling over that bar. And you get that going and you're right in that moment and you just go and bam, when you hit it, there's no better feeling than that. And to me, that discipline is what leadership is all about.
Yeah.
It's being in the moment. So let's just say you're in a meeting and somebody screwed something up, which is a mental
It's
term.
okay.
But it didn't work the way you wanted it to, and
Right.
you're a little angry and you're a little pissed off because you feel like you're going to miss a deadline or you're not going to get something to the client on
You
time,
just
and it's
want to go
going
after them in the meeting, which is such a no-no
exactly,
in
and
front of others.
and a lot of times I know a lot of leaders that are afraid of how it reflects on them, not the other person. So
Oh,
they get all caught up in the ego of, oh, well, how's it going to make me look? Versus, okay, this is where we are. Why did it happen? Let's undercut, just uncover the root causes. And without blaming or shaming the other person so that they can show up in their in a safe space where they can be honest with you and you build trust between yourselves. We know something just happened. If we can evaluate what happened, think about what the solutions are, because you're not going to change it. It's already there. So what are our options, A, B, C, D, and then how do we want to proceed forward? And you do that in a calm, present energy that's really grounded in, we're all going to be safe. We're all going to be fine. We can all manage this. And you just, that's a leadership quality because you're lifting people out of the emotion of the situation. You're lifting
yeah.
them out of the anger, the frustration, the ego, whatever that looks like. And that's leadership, and
Yeah.
it takes some effort to do that every day and to be constantly in that mode of how do I lift? How do I not go into reaction? Because we're human.
Yeah, yeah. And and the example that you use, I'm thinking, okay, there's a person that messed up, right? And so elevating them so they're not worried, right?
Yeah.
Worried, but still important to have a conversation with them later.
Yeah, of course. And
Yeah,
how you manage the conversation is,
that's another half of it. Yeah.
that's the whole, yeah, second half. It may have been an honest mistake, right? It may
Absolutely.
have been a completely honest mistake, and it's just simply, they could have not had the right tool. They could not have had enough time. They could not have had the right resources. It could be
Or
totally something.
distracted. I mean, that there's tons of reasons. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you don't understand that. So it's having that conversation in a way that doesn't make people feel judged and doesn't make people feel blamed or shamed.
Mhm.
Judgment, blame, and shame are all ego qualities. Leadership is about rising above those to create that safe zone and be the leader you would follow. It starts with knowing yourself and then being able to create a clarity for your organization and connection, collaboration, and so that people can know how to show up and know how to be in a safe environment. I like this term called we create the container. So
Yes. Yeah.
whatever meeting you're in, whatever organization you're in, whatever moment, you're creating the energy in the space. Is it joyful? Is it fun? Is it creative? Do we start bouncing stuff off of
Calming,
each other and
motivating.
it
Yeah.
becomes a really fun brainstorming session? Or are we sitting there going, and we've all been in this meeting and said, this is a real situation.
I know exactly what you're going to do. Go ahead.
You've got this VP of IT in the room with 15 executive directors. She's very behind on her budget to the board of directors. Why weren't you guys doing what I said you should do? You're not listening. We're moving the deadlines up to da 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 da. And no one wants to speak up and find
Who's
solutions.
this? Yeah, yeah.
No one.
I learned a lesson about this some years ago too. Some years ago too, and it was a one-to-one situation. It wasn't a meeting, but I saw too many men, and I don't mean to bash men because I coach men and women. It doesn't matter.
I love men and women.
But I was reared, and my early education, or not my education, but my career, I was 19 years old when I got into mortgage lending. And so here I am in finance, and I'm this hot little chickie, and, I'm married, married at 19, right?
Oh,
with
wow.
all these men. And I mean, it was just always the till of the hun. And I knew that I would never do that. I don't want to do that. And my personality tends to be that way, right? I'm very systematic, engineer type, all of that. I'm very systematic. So I could be that way, but I thought, I can never be that way. I don't ever want to be like that. But I had this, this person who worked on my team. Well, she took care of my loans, right? But she took care of other people's loans too. So I had to deal with them and fight for my, it was like a bunch of little piggies trying to go to the trough, and we're all trying to fight for for the time. But I would go in and just steamroll her. I'd go, hey, did that get done? And this get done? And that get done? And I thought, okay, so I didn't want to be that in the boardroom, which I was managing people, right? And I was leading people. I was a sales manager, and I didn't do it in the boardroom, but boy, did I do it on the side, right?
Yeah.
And
We've all done it.
And she literally went back one time, and she's like, well, with an attitude like that, I'm not going to do anything for you. Right. And I thought, oh, okay, I got to learn my lesson. And for me, it was tough because when I was learning how to control my emotions and level up my emotional intelligence, it literally required, and I want everybody to listen to this. I want you to listen as if you're here, is, it required me to stand outside of her office and breathe. I mean, just as simple like, okay, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to talk about stuff that I don't care about, but I'm going to take it, right? And so I would roll around the corner and I go, hey, Robin, how was your dinner last night? What'd you guys do? What'd you watch? Right. And under the table, my foot's going, da, 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 right?
Yeah.
But I learned, that I have to, sort of mirror people. And that's part of leadership is mirroring and sensing what's going on with them. And, even a person that you feel you can talk to openly and have a supportive relationship in a specific moment may need to be more directive. So
absolutely. Yeah. I love that you talked about the word breathing. And I think that's actually such an important piece. Here in the US, I mean, I'm sure you've done this. I know so many of us do this. We schedule our day where you have the meeting at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2,
breathing room.
And so there's no room to breathe. And the breath is such an amazing way to calm the nervous system, to allow us to be present instead of being caught up in all that emotion and to get out of our ego a little bit, and then what I personally choose to do is I like to breathe. And especially if I'm ticked, I will leave the room because my nervous system has a trigger that's, and our triggers are created when we're young. Our triggers are generally from age 0 to 7. So if I get triggered, I often just try to leave the situation because, maybe you can, but for the most part, that's what I try to do. And I do try to breathe or I try to go take a walk. I get outside in the air. I put my feet on the ground,
Environmental change.
Environmental change. And then I come back and then I kind of start asking myself, empowering questions rather than questions like, how can I? How can we do this? How can we learn from this? What is there? And you start, and it shifts the energy that you're starting to portray, and it starts shifting both your and your the recipient, the employee, the colleague, the client. It shifts their energy. So we're then in solution mode, and we're working to kind of come together to come that common vision. And
Yeah.
in that takes, it's like going to a gym. It's like you build a muscle and you have to keep working it out to keep it strong.
Yeah.
And for me, that's how it
Yeah.
works.
It's totally the reps. And, now that I'm not in the corporate world, haven't been for 9 years now,
Yeah.
I still have that mentality, and I coach on this, but I find myself doing some of the same things with my grandkids,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't treat them the same. Not everybody gets the same everything. Some need more, support
Yeah.
because they're being bullied, maybe, right? So they need
Um,
more support. Others are like me, and they're just like, and so we can have a very quick conversation, and it's filled with love, even though it's very quick.
you know,
Right?
and fill your day with love. What if
Yeah.
leadership was a love language? What
Yeah.
if, what if you thought about it that way?
Yeah, it
You
is.
know?
It's filled with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and in corporate, that wouldn't normally be something you would traditionally say. Now, that's a nice
But
distinction,
it
I think,
is.
between corporate and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs are way more starting to step out with that type of language. They're
Absolutely.
they're really starting to think about how do we create graceful places that are really giving and loving and warm for people. And those
Yeah.
cultures are shifting things, and they're shifting the results. And just imagine you
Mhm.
wake up every day because you're happy to go to work because it feels good to be there,
Yeah. Jumping
Yeah.
out of bed instead of time to make the donuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you that are younger, I apologize. Go to YouTube and watch the Dunkin' Donut commercial.
That's all good.
You'll understand. Because believe me, there were times in my career that I was like, oh, it's time to make the donuts. And the good thing about being an entrepreneur is that, at least for me, and I know it may not be for everybody, that's why we have Business on the Vine. That's what we're sharing these ideas, right?
Yeah.
Is that, I have days, and I'm sure you do too, where I failed at leadership. I barked at somebody. I have days where I don't want to get up, and I'm going, not again, not again, and again. But there are fewer of them
Yeah.
when I have the ability to run my practice the way I want to run. But I do think even in corporate, you can be your own person, and you don't have to follow, the soldierness of, I don't even know if that's a word, but being a soldier, where everybody looks the same, walks the same, acts the same, to
Yeah.
somebody. I absolutely love it. When you think back on your business, when you came out of corporate and you were an entrepreneur, for someone who's listening, and this is why we call it Business on the Vine. We heard it through the grapevine, right? We want to hear from the grapevine. Looking back on that, you had leadership skills, right? What would you tell someone who doesn't? And saying, if you're just starting out, or, I had a client who'd been in business for 17 years, and she had no leadership
Mm.
skills. And thank goodness they were surviving 20 million top line revenue. Somehow they
Mm.
got there, but she was just so unhappy because of a lot of different things, right? And so we
She was
helped.
unhappy in corporate or where she went to?
No, she owned her own roofing company for
Okay.
17 years, and she just didn't have any leadership skills whatsoever, and had
Mm.
five managers who worked for her, but she didn't trust any of them. She circumvented them, and everybody was just like, I don't know, walking on eggshells. It was just,
Yeah.
and she would look successful on paper, and externally everything looked successful, but she was really unhappy.
Mm.
Just, she wasn't successful in her personal life. She was working too many hours, too many
Mm.
problems, too many everything. And it's like, let go to grow, right? You got to let go.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what advice, I don't want to say advice, what counsel would you give to someone who, because we're talking about leadership, who doesn't have that experience?
That is such an important question. So thank you for asking it.
Mhm.
And there's a couple ways I feel like I want to answer, but I know let's start with the definition of success. a lot of people in our world today, we're such a materialistic, capitalistic society. It often gets defined strictly by your bank account or your sales or some
Revenue.
number. And the pursuit of just a number is not fulfillment.
Yeah.
The pursuit of joy, the pursuit of uplifting others, the pursuit of creating something that gives to the world, that's much more fulfilling for most people when they get to it.
Yeah.
Our,
When they figure it out.
our opportunity is we've often been taught or told somewhere along the path that you can't make money doing that.
Right.
You can't be successful doing that. So
Mhm.
there's an internal belief system that often says, no, I can't do it this way. I have to do it this way, but I don't like it this way, but I, pay some
That's
bills.
what they say to do. Yeah.
It feels like our perception is that it's keeping you safe. And that's a catch-22 trap. So one of the biggest things that we do on this inner game of leadership, the inner game of leadership, is rewire all these things you've been taught that don't serve you anymore. And that comes to getting to know the real you. So we talked about reactions. This is sort of going into the next level, is you understanding and unpacking all those limiting beliefs. My I have a limiting belief, and it's kind of a little bit of a rough story to share, so I may not give all the details of it. But I grew up believing that I had to be perfect, and even if I was perfect, I wasn't good enough. So
That's
earlier,
me. That's me.
yeah,
Direct
earlier,
mirror.
yeah, earlier when we were talking about that, I got on the consulting hamster wheel and I lost me. That's really what it came down to is I was trying to people please all
Mhm.
these other people and just instead of and if it wasn't good enough, I kept trying to work. If I work, just work harder, it'll
Mm-mm.
get better. Well,
Yeah.
that's actually a fallacy. And at a certain point, you might get to here, but at a certain point, something's going to crash.
I was going to say, how's that working?
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Because I was in it too. I was in
yeah.
it too. Yeah. So, my system is called Hustle to Harmony.
Mm,
And it's for that very same reason, spent my entire life proving people pleasing, right? Proving I'll be perfect. My dad was an alcoholic. So if I'm perfect, he won't drink. My
yeah.
mom was a verbal abuser. If I'm perfect, she won't yell.
Yes.
Right. And so
Yes.
achieving, that perfection, 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 perfection.
Yes.
And, and then I said, I'm done. I want to live. I'm done proving. I want to start living. And
You
that's,
actually get to that point.
yeah,
Yeah. And when you're ready to get to that point and step through it, then there's another thing that I personally encountered, which was the fear of stepping out and being seen for myself. I
yeah,
had to transgress. So I got over the first limiting belief. Then the second step of the limiting
yeah,
belief was getting over the fear of stepping out as me.
yeah. I
And
had armor on.
oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
had armor. You're not coming in here. You're not
Yeah,
coming in here. I'm doing good. I'm fine. But I
yeah,
wasn't.
yeah. That word fine is not one that it's a good
I
feeling.
know.
Yeah, yeah. There's no such thing as fine. But when we allow ourselves to be seen and we allow ourselves to start trusting ourselves and we allow ourselves to breathe and say, well, this is what I really find joy at. The people that inspire me, that I do a lot of internal work, and I do this with people as well as I do my own work. So people I look to for guidance. I have a spiritual teacher. I
Mhm.
like reading Joe Dispenza or listening to Joe
Yep.
Dispenza. I love Abraham
It's
Hicks.
wonderful. Mhm.
Those are some Louise Hay. Those are some of my go-tos for my that personal time I craft in a day to help me stay grounded and present so that I show up at my best for people.
Yeah.
Now, when I work with people, I like to do it in a couple ways too. One of my programs is to have little retreats where we
Mhm.
come together and we work through things and we make them an experience where
Yeah.
it's not a business setting. I'm a big believer of getting out of a business setting,
Oh, yeah, me too.
and I'm a big believer in getting out of your head. So, you know, one that I'll often start a talk, and this may touch a button, which I hope it does, is ladies, there is no glass ceiling, and men, your ego is not your identity.
Yes.
And let's
Yeah.
start there, let's start unpacking from that place. But when you create a safe space for people and you allow them to peel off some of the armor that you and I both probably have had, and peel that off, there's something else that starts showing up and expanding, and you just keep letting the other thing inside of you expand.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, it's a journey. To me, it is truly like having a gym membership where you have to continually go and work at it. It's not a, oh, I got it. I'm there, so I'm good now.
Done.
It's not
Arrived.
that. Yeah,
Right.
there's no
Yeah.
arrival.
Yeah. It's a constant thing. Yeah. It's
Yeah, it's a
constant.
constant thing. So finding those people that you're in resonance with, looking for something that gets you out of the box.
Mhm.
Um, I'll give you an example. We held a nice retreat for a group of women who were looking to be better speakers and to find their voice and to find their message. And that's part of my packaging of
Mhm.
knowing the real you is and being the leader you would follow is to know really your message and to really have that come from a place of such authenticity that it really lands with people. And it was so interesting. These are senior executive women
Mhm.
who you put them in front of a camera that's not even actually filming anything for anything. And
Yeah.
they're just clamming up. They're
Frozen.
just so
Yeah.
clamming up.
Yeah. I don't have anything to say. I don't have anything to share. Yes, you do.
Well, their
Yeah.
body shifts, their
Mhm.
energy shifts, the way they can verbalize something. I was even working with a woman. It was a small medical devices company, and they were doing a video to talk to their shareholders, their stakeholders. And I brought in the film crew, the production crew, and I'm
Right.
working with the CEO and the VP of finance to actually get the message out. And the woman, she and I, and she's such this joyful personality. She's a runner. She's so fun and friendly, has this beautiful smile. And she's talking to me right here. And, she's like, da, 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 this is the story. And I'm like, that's great. Let's do it. The camera, by the way, was right here.
Oh
So she
gosh.
looks 1 degree over.
Yeah.
Hello, da 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 da. It's
Right.
totally shifted, and
Yes.
that's a confidence thing. It's a
Yeah.
belief system. What's happening at a subconscious level is you're second guessing yourself. How are people going to judge me? Am I saying, for her, it was, am I saying it right?
Yeah.
And this is how other people say it.
Yeah.
This is what the industry normally expects
Yeah.
versus just being ourselves and putting it out there. And the leaders that are groundbreakers are, I love Richard Branson. He's himself, he's just himself. He may not be your cup of tea. And if he isn't, don't go work for Virgin.
Well, look at, I mean, same with Grant Cardone, right? I mean, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. I mean, people can turn, I mean, same with our president, same with our
Ex-
past president, right? It
ex-
doesn't matter. And
it's who appeals and
yeah,
you resonate with,
yeah,
and you find those people, and you step out. You take the risk,
yeah,
and you get to choose what that looks like. You get to choose where it's coming from. Is it coming from some place of self-protection? Is it coming from some place of love? Is it which side? It's either fear or love that you're coming from,
yeah,
one of the two. And you get to choose every single day with your messaging, with your words, with your energy, with your actions, what you want to contribute and how you want to get there, and you get to make the choice.
I
That's
love,
leadership, is being able to stand in that boldness. And I think we are at a place in our society where all the leaders that we just mentioned plus a couple of others are asking us to stand and lead.
yeah,
There is something shifting on the planet, and it is beautiful. It is scary for a lot of people too, but there is a shift happening in the planet, and we are being asked to choose, who do we
yeah,
want to be and who do we want to show up as, and what are we standing for?
yeah, yeah.
And
Being the realness, the real and authentic. Yeah, I love all this conversation. There's so much commonality that we have,
yeah,
in our thoughts,
I
or
know
even
that.
our past, right? Even
I
our
know.
past that brings all this together. It's almost like, if this is your past, maybe you should go into leadership because there's something there, right? There's something there. I don't know. Who knows? So how do people get in touch with you? What is the best way for people? We'll have lots of links and stuff, but what is the best way for someone to get in touch
You
with you?
know, if you're listening to this and you want to get in touch, you can text me. I'm going to give you that text number because I just got a new number, so I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
747-774-7459. And I'll
Oh
repeat
my
that.
gosh.
I'm going to repeat it.
Poor thing.
747-774-7459.
Oh
That's
my
one
God.
way. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Those are the two I check the most. I've got accounts out there on all your social media, but those are the two I'm on the most.
Yeah. Awesome. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave us with? A quote, a mantra, something.
I want to inspire people, and I want women and men to recognize that you are more than you probably even know you can be. And I want you to stand up. I want you to step out. I don't care if it's with Jen. I don't care if it's with me. I want you to be the leader you would follow. Invest in yourself.
Yeah.
This is what we haven't been taught. People of at least my generation. I get inspired by the 20-year-olds that actually have parents that have done some of this work. So there is a generation that's coming up that's done the inner game work.
Yes.
And I'm excited about that. But
Right.
I want people to recognize you are worth investing in yourself. Go on a retreat. Go, and it doesn't have to be a formal leadership program. Start with a retreat. I started with something called Landmark Education. I outgrew it. I found another coach. I outgrew her. I found a spiritual teacher. I've gone through so many different types of retreats, and I get different things out of each of them.
Oh, yeah.
And investing in yourself and knowing that you have something beautiful here to give, and people need to hear you. They need to hear you.
Yeah.
Is the best, most fulfilling thing you can do in your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I'd like to leave people with.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Hollie. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And it's about time. It took us 5 years.
I'm so glad we're here.
It was 5 years because it must have been in May, right? It must have been around May as we're recording this that COVID was COVID, but we weren't shut down yet.
Yeah.
So it must have been about 5 years. It's been a pleasure. I learned so much from you. Thank you so much for joining us. And absolutely. So remember to hop on over to YouTube and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, if you're not following us, just click on the quick follow button. And if you have a few minutes and you'd like to scroll down and give us a great review, a 5-star review, and put a comment in there about what you learned from Hollie, we would love to hear from you. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. We love it. Thank you for joining us on Business on the Vine. If you found value in today's conversation and would like additional support, go to supportfromjen.com. Remember, the best ideas are always discovered on the vine. So keep innovating, stay inspired, and continue to grow.